Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Morgan. This is my channel Pisces Paperbacks, and today I'm going to be going over all 12 books that I read in July. So as you will recall, I did not read super much in May, and then I read nothing in June. So reading 12 books in July is really great. Even if it's not like my best month ever, it's still like honestly on the better side. So I'm super happy with it, even though I think 8 of those 12 books were read in like the first 10 days, and then the other 4 were read in the second half of the month. It happens, it is what it is, and now I want to talk about them, so let's jump right on in. The very first book I read this month was Neon Gods by Katee Robert, and this is a much hyped, making the rounds of booktube and book talk and book internet, Hades and Persephone retelling. So I don't think I've made it any secret that I'm not a huge, like, Hades and Persephone is not a selling point for me. Oftentimes it makes me a little like, because I'm so, like, I know what the story is going to generally be already, and unless someone can really convince me of the character dynamics, it's like, but I've had luck with Katee Robert before, and so I was like, you know what, I want to support. I got the arc on NetGalley, like, I just want to see what it's about. And I did enjoy it. I think in general it's like a 3.5 star. Zeus and the other main gods who rule like the upper city, and then Hades rules the lower city. They're not actually gods, they're like elected officials, and it's not like Olympus heaven, it's like Olympus, like kind of a New York, an urban environment. Then there's the river Styx, and then Hades is in like the lower city. This follows Persephone, who is the daughter of Demeter, and her mother kind of surprises her with an engagement to Zeus without asking her, and to get away from that situation, Persephone runs across the river Styx into Hades' arms, and he is kind of this shadowy figure, and they kind of do this fake relationship BDSM situation. And overall, like, I liked it. I thought the writing was fine. I thought the sex scenes were very sexy. I didn't think like the characters were unique or memorable enough to really overshadow how, like, already I know how this story is kind of gonna play out, that the plot was, you know what I mean? So it was good. I'm still probably going to like read the rest of the books in this series, but it wasn't like anything to, you know, shout about. Up next, I read the Midwinter Mail Order Bride by Wilde, different Katee, and this is a fantasy romance that I first heard of from Mara at Books Like Whoa. Like, one of the first videos I ever watched of her was the wrap-up where she read this, so it was very exciting for me when it was free, I think, on Kindle for like a week, so I picked it up. Anyway, this book is about, and again, like always, I don't remember anyone's name. This is about a, not in the book, but like before the book, defeated a tyrannical king and is now the ruler of these like 6 kingdoms, but he doesn't really see himself as a king, even though he's trying to fill that role. He is like a warrior, a leader, like a war whatever. And so he hasn't been very happy. So one of his assistants sends letters across the kingdom and to different kingdoms saying our king needs a bride, and the only person who responded is this girl who is the princess of like another kingdom who's not under his rule. And so she shows up and she is kind of drugged, so she's being a little honest, and she looks at him and she's like, we're gonna get married, and he's like, okay, and she's like, and then I'm gonna kill you, and he was like, oh, you're gonna kill me? But then she says something along the lines of like, and I guess I'll like put up with your touch in our marriage bed, and he is very like anti anything less than absolutely enthusiastic consent. So he's like, okay, so we're not getting married, I'm just going to escort you home, and then I'm coming back and we're never going to see each other again. And of course, along the way, they fall in love. It was very cute. I gave it 4 stars. I thought, I wish there was more sex scenes. There was only like 1 or 2, and it's like a full-length book pretty much, so I wish there was more, but I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the characters. It was just very fun. And then right after this, I read The Midnight Bride by Katee Wilde, which is a much shorter book. So the last book was like full novel length. This book was like 140 pages, and this is about a girl and a guy, no names. We know how I roll, no names, and they're both in this like competition across the land to recapture this like ancient magical artifact. And along the way, she is taken hostage. It's very like convoluted to make the plot work, but she's basically taken prisoner by a sorcerer, and to get through the loopholes of like freeing her, they have to get married. So it's like forced marriage, forced proximity, and then they like have to work together to figure out how to fix whatever is going on. I also really enjoyed this one. Gave it like 3.5, 4 stars. There was even more sex scenes than the other book, even though this book was like half the length. I was just not as convinced of their relationship because obviously there's not enough time to really invest in it, and it was just like, this one was like really good but also just fine. So like 3.5, 4 stars. Next I read The Craft of Love by EE Ottoman, and this is a very, very cute, unbeknownst to me, it's a clean romance. There's no like smutty scenes, but it's a very, very cute historical romance about a silversmith in New York in the 1880s, I believe, falling in love with a quilt maker. And this book very like follows when they first meet and when they first like start to like get to know each other, and then it ends, I don't care, it's a romance, we know how it's gonna go. It ends like right after their first kiss, and it's like 100 pages, and it is it's like almost perfection. It is one of the best examples of like an author being able to really capture those like exciting butterfly feelings of like getting a crush on someone and really liking them and not knowing what to do about how much you like them, and then also like, do they like you back? You have, you know, pain in your past, can you get past that? And like just the feelings of like a beginning of a relationship, like the beginning of like a real relationship, I've never seen captured as well as in this book. It's like, it's so cute, it's so good. EE Ottoman is also a trans author of historical romance, and his name is Benjamin. The guy's name is Benjamin. In this, he is a trans man in the 1880s of New York or whatever. So it's just very interesting to see that perspective. There's a lot of really good conversations in this book as well, and it's just like, it's adorable. I gave it 4.5 stars. I wanted it to be longer, and there was like a couple moments where I was like, but mostly it was just like me screaming about like how wonderful this book was. Next I read Sizzle and Burn by Jayne and Krentz. I talked about this a little bit in my haul, but I think I did not do a very good job at all talking about what this plot is. And there's kind of a reason for that. It's because this plot is like, what is it? Anyway, this is a paranormal romantic suspense about these people who have psychic powers. So when she touches things, she like hears memories, like she hears the thoughts of the people that they had when they were touching things. And then the guy, he like can feel their emotions, he can like track the feelings that are attached to certain objects. And so she, at the very beginning of the book, in the very first chapter, discovers the captive of a serial killer in the basement of her late aunt's house. And you'd think that would be the plot, but it's not. So basically, what is her name? I have the book right here. Her name is Rain, and his name is Zach. So basically, Zach is a member of J&J, which is this 100-year-old paranormal investigative kind of like PI department, and so they investigate like paranormal and psychic crimes, etc. And so Zach is hired to look into the death of Rain's aunt because it's like, maybe she did not die of natural causes type of situation, because she might have had information about this formula that is like for a drug that can enhance psychic abilities that is currently being experimented with and manufactured by this like evil psychic drug cartel. Does that make sense? No? That's fine. And that's kind of the plot. Not much like literally not much happens in this book for like 80 pages, and then like they have sex, and then things start to happen. It's like, it was pacing wise, this book was bizarre. Also very bizarre, the fact that I went to go add this to my currently reading on Goodreads, and Goodreads was like, you've read this before, and I was like, literally no, I have not. I have never seen a single one of these words ever before in my life. And as I was reading it, I was like, I was right, I've never read this before in my entire life. And then I got like halfway through, and suddenly I recognized one thing from this entire book. I remembered one thing, and it was that Rain's assistant at her job is goth. I was like, oh yeah, she's like a goth employee who like wears platforms, and like they go to like her emo bar for one scene, and that is the one thing I remember from this entire novel. Anyway, 3 stars. Then I very excitingly read The Companion by EE Ottoman. This was the book that I first just like found out who EE Ottoman was because I saw his like tweet talking about the release date of this and like the cover reveal, and I thought the cover was so beautiful, and then I pre-ordered the book when I found out what it was about. So this is another historical romance. I believe it takes place in like the 1910s. So maybe, and this is about, I don't know their names, I'm very sorry. It's about a woman who is just very burnt out from trying to make it in the New York literary scene, and one of her friends is like, I have a friend, he's a novelist, he lives in upstate New York, and he's just looking like for a companion. He's very remote, he doesn't go into town much, and he just wants someone like to keep him company. And so you can go out there and then, you know, see how it goes. So she goes up to New York and she meets him, and he's, you know, very nice, he's very kind, he's very interesting, but she kind of like starts to develop feelings for him when she asks him to kind of experiment with her sexually, because she's like, I've never been with someone before. And so she also at the same time is developing feelings for his next door neighbor, who is a very passionate artistic woman. And so it's kind of about, it's an eventual polyamorous relationship. The book is mostly just like her relationship with each of them individually, and then towards the end of the book it becomes sort of a triad, especially since the novelist and the neighbor have history. They were previously in a relationship. So let me just say, everybody in this book is queer, everybody in this book is trans, and this book is excellent. It's excellent. The sex scenes were very good, they were well written, they were different, they weren't like overdone, and I think they really like contributed to like the emotional journey of the book. It was just also like the atmosphere of the writing, and the writing, oh my god, the writing is beautiful. This book was just, it was just like 4.5 stars, like 4.5 stars, almost 5 stars. Like it just wasn't, it wasn't like, when it comes to romances, I'm so mean about 5 stars. Like I very rarely give them out. This book is like, this book is excellent. 4.5 stars. And then the next book I read, I listened to the audiobook like completely in one day while I was at work, and that is Trixie and Katya's Guide to Modern Womanhood by Trixie Mattel and Katya Zamolodchikova. And they are 2 drag queens who were previously on RuPaul's Drag Race and then kind of have achieved success beyond Drag Race. I have been a fan of theirs for many a year, and so I was like, what's a quick little audiobook I could listen to at work? This looks good, and you know what? I enjoyed it. I'm gonna give it 4 stars. It's basically like a humor book, kind of in the form by way of self-help guide to womanhood via 2 drag queens. It's kind of like the pitch. I really liked it. I think that if you weren't already a fan of theirs, like maybe you wouldn't get as much out of it. I also think that because I read the audiobook version, I missed out on enjoying the photography, because I've heard that the pictures in this book are like particularly beautiful. So would I read it again? Maybe. Maybe I'd pick it up physically from like the library to look at the pictures sometime, but once I've read this, like there's not too much to add. It was good. I liked it. The next book I read was All We Shall Know by Donal. This is a very interesting literary fiction novel, and I first heard of it. Elsa, what are you doing? I first heard of it because it was one of Ariel Basset's favorite books from the past couple years, and so I picked it up and I started reading it. And this book is about Melody She. She is 33 and she's pregnant with the child of the 17-year-old traveler boy that she was teaching how to read. And so the very beginning of the book starts off with her telling her husband and leaving him, and kind of it follows her week by week throughout her entire pregnancy, in her relationship with her father, as well as her friendship with a young traveler girl that she meets. And I gave this book 4 stars. I don't know that I liked it. I found it very, not easy to read, but it wasn't like difficult to get through the pages. And I also found Melody, like the writing was beautiful. I really liked the writing and the storytelling, and it's so interesting because this book is very like, Melody is the main character. The book is in her head. The text is ostensibly, she's a writer, and it's what she's writing kind of to herself that she plans on deleting later. So it's like all of her innermost thoughts and feelings, and she is so complex and interesting as a person, and you learn about her history and kind of like the small moments that led her to the point where she was in her life to do this thing that she like hates herself for, but also can't hate herself and the child for. And it's like she's one of the most, it was so human as a book. Like, this book is something, I'm not much of an adult literary fiction reader, okay? Maybe it's just like I don't get out that much in that genre, but I just found the way this book was like, we're gonna talk about the intricacies and the messy pieces of humanity and like what it means to be a human going through these intense physical and emotional and hormonal changes, while also I will say it was a book about pregnancy that I enjoyed, probably because even though it was a book about pregnancy, the book did not like detail the changes in her body. You know what I mean? It wasn't about the physical process of pregnancy and childbirth. The book was about the emotional process of like her coming to terms with her life. And so yeah, I don't know, I have a lot of feelings about this book. I think I'm going to be thinking about it for a long time. I don't know if I loved it. I don't know if very strange, very strange. Lots of 4 stars this month. Next up, I read Wild Rain by Beverly Jenkins. Definitely my favorite of any Beverly Jenkins I've read so far. Each one I read, I just keep liking a little more. And this one, it's because the last time I read Beverly Jenkins, it was Indigo, and I liked it a lot because I actually liked the hero, which had never happened before. This time, I liked the hero. He was cool, he was nice, but there was also an external plot. There was an external plot, like, for most of the book. She usually, like, kind of has hints of a plot, and then there's, like, really no, like, mystery or antagonist until like the last like 15% of the, like 10% of the book. But this time it was like 100%. There was, starting even at the 50% mark, there was an actual plot to this book. So this follows Spring, and she is the sister of previous heroes of Beverly Jenkins. So the very first book of hers I read was Tempest, and the hero in that is like Dr. something, Dr. Lee is their last name, and she's his sister. And this book is about her falling in love with this journalist from Washington, D.C. who's come into the territory to interview her brother for a black newspaper back in the city, back on the East Coast. And it starts off, she finds him in a snowstorm and she takes him in, and they kind of like bond. And then when someone from her past comes into town and things start to happen, it's like they get closer and they work together and they just communicate emotionally. And I really liked this book. The hero, he is the journalist in this story, but also you find out in the book that he writes for his father's newspaper, but his passion is actually his day job, which is carpentry. And I thought that was interesting, especially since I don't really think carpentry and his love of woodworking actually comes up like enough in the book to really justify it being one of his major personality traits. Very strange. Anyway, like 4 stars. This book was very enjoyable. Again, it's good to know that there are Beverly Jenkins books that I can like. Then I read Who Wants to Marry a Duke by Sabrina Jeffries. This is in my May wrap up, I was describing the plot of the Duke Dynasty family series. This is the 3rd book in that series, the one where in the first book the oldest half-brother marries the cousin of the youngest half-brother. This book is about the middle half-brother falling in love with someone who's not related to anybody in their family. This is the only book where it's someone outside of the family, and so that was cool. So this book is about, I don't remember his name, but I remember her name is Olivia Norley, and this book basically is about how they have decided to concretely investigate whether or not their dads were all murdered. And so one way they're going to do this is by having a chemist test one of their father's remains for arsenic to see if he was poisoned. And Olivia Norley happens to be a very talented, what are you doing, Elsa? She happens to be a very talented chemist. So when the oldest brother hires Olivia Norley to test his father's remains, the middle brother, who about 10 years prior had some particular run-in with Olivia Norley, is very skeptical of her motives. So he kind of invites himself along to the oldest brother's estate to make sure Olivia Norley is going to be doing what she says she's doing in terms of the chemistry stuff and not like the scheme in any way. And then they fall in love. And I will say, I'm very much of two minds about this book. On the one hand, the second half was so fun and enjoyable, and they are so cute together, and they really have chemistry, and I just really, really liked it. On the other hand, I had to stop reading after 12 pages because I found the main hero so insufferably stupid, stubborn, and idiotic and stupid. And that stupidity basically lasts for like the first third of the book. It's infuriating. He's basically like, okay, so the incident that happened in the past was kind of that they were caught in a compromising situation, and then her stepmother kind of blackmailed him into proposing to Olivia, and then Olivia says no, and so he's both infuriated with her for turning him down after he's so cruelly like pushed into like having to offer for her, but then also he's like mad at her for helping her stepmother scheme to put him in that situation, to get caught in like a compromising situation with her. And it's like, obviously she did not help, like it's very clear from like the very first moment that she was not involved at all. Why would she turn you down if she was part of like the scheme to trap you? And it's like he's convinced for so long, but he's also so mad that she doesn't really want to kiss him. Like, she wants to kiss him, but he's so mad at her for like resisting kissing him, but also he's so mad at her for kissing him, and it's like, dude, shut the fuck up. Anyway, 3.5 stars. I originally gave it 3.5 stars, and then as I was making my list of all the books I read this month, I bumped it up to 4 because I was like, oh, I really liked that book. But then as I've been talking about it, I've been getting so angry again. Like, the first third of this book was infuriating. I'm bumping it back down, 3.5. Then the highlight of highlights of the month, I read Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. I posted a vlog about this book, and this book is 5 stars. It follows Wallace Price, and he is kind of a high-powered attorney. He's very business. He has no personal life, no close family, no close friends, and he's just straight up like he's an asshole. And at the very end of the first chapter, he dies, and kind of in a Christmas Carol, Ghosts of Christmas Present sort of situation, he witnesses his own funeral, and then a reaper escorts him to a tea shop where he will be helped into moving on to whatever is in the great beyond. And this tea shop is run by Hugo, and it's just about Wallace kind of becoming a better man, and then like learning to grow and learning to help and create connections with people, as well as falling in love with Hugo and falling in love with May, who's the reaper who lives there, as well as like the other people in the tea shop. And it's just, this book, it's so good. I will say, I don't think this book is going to work for as many people as The House in the Cerulean Sea did, because The House in the Cerulean Sea is like very light all the way through basically, and it's lots of like fun little mishaps and children, magical children, and it's very like almost Pixar meets Studio Ghibli-ish. This book is very much more rooted in like, what if there was a comedy about grief? And grief and death is like the main theme throughout the entire book. I also think that, I will say, I don't think this book is perfect. The switch that Wallace makes at the very beginning, like a chapter like 3 or 4, between being like a total douchebag to like being very, very like repentant for how horrible he was like very fast for how cartoonishly evil he was in the very first chapter. Like, it was very like sudden, but I don't know, I loved this book. This book hit me where it hurts. a lot, and I just cried for like the last like third of this book was just me crying. And yeah, it was a great time. And last, I read There by Tommy Orange. This is a contemporary literary fiction, and it follows the point of views of like it's a lot, maybe like 8 urban Indians as they prepare and try to get to this big powwow in Oakland. And it was good. I liked it a lot, but I also, it's just like, it's so like adult literary fiction that I'm automatically just like, it's just like not the kind of book that I like am more inclined to love, you know what I mean? But it was very good. It follows a lot of different perspectives from a lot of different ages, and it kind of does that thing where it introduces little bits of information from this kind of entire circle to create like a full picture of like what is happening. And I think that there was maybe like 1 or 2 too many perspectives. Maybe it was because I was listening to the audiobook, so I wasn't able to like switch back to the front of every chapter and check whose point of view I was reading from, but there were times where I was like, I had to stop what I was doing and be like, who's talking right now? What is this about? And like figure out what was going on. I also think that the ending, I wanted more from the ending. I think it ended just like a little too abruptly for me, while I can also see how that ending would really, really work for other people. So like I don't really have a rating for this book yet, sorry, but I'm still thinking about it. And this was a book that I actually read for a book club I do with 2 of my friends, and we're talking about this book on Thursday. So after I talk to them, I'll probably update my Goodreads and let you know what I like definitively think I'm gonna rate this book. And there you have it, all 12 books that I read this month. I had a great time. There was really nothing that I hated, which is like a win if I've ever heard one. And I had a lot of 4 stars this month, which was really great. So I was generally enjoying most of the things that I read, and I just had a good time. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Let me know if you're going to read any of these books. Read Under the Whispering Door, and please read The Craft of Love. Those are the 2 that I'm like most like hyping up this month. And yeah, I had a great time. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!